ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
This has proven to be a rather challenging essay to compose due to the vast and detailed subject matter. Though far-reaching, the subjects covered are all related. For clarity and to better grasp the understanding of this thesis, you should liken the following far-reaching content, connections, and associations to an enormous spider web spread far and wide, but where all of the individual strands of these elongated webs ultimately lead to the middle and the center of Illuminism. Secrets of the Ages is the result of 6 years of extensive research into the esoteric and exoteric. The information contained herein is all sourced, documented, and verifiable. Though sweeping in scope, there are clear and concise connections, coincidences, and some immutable facts presented. It is for you to come to your own conclusions, but before you do, put aside your preconceived notions of history and belief systems and take a serious, objective look at the material presented. Here is another strange piece to the puzzle: the murder of John Lennon. John Lennon's assassin, Mark David Chapman, killed Lennon, stayed at the scene, and read The Catcher in the Rye until the police arrived. In a statement 3 hours later, Chapman said, "I'm sure the large part of me is Holden Caulfield, who's the main person in the book. The small part of me must be the devil." While Chapman met LaVey's friend Kenneth Anger, an American underground filmmaker and disciple of the Beast 666, the wickedest man in the world, Satanist Aleister Crowley, in Honolulu in the late 1970s. Chapman attended one of Kenneth Anger's film lectures in Hawaii 6 weeks before Lennon was shot. David Hirschenhorn, who interviewed Chapman for the New York Times in October 2000, confirmed that Chapman was in Hawaii in December 1980. Chapman flew to New York on December 6th, and Lennon was dead 2 days later. In his conversation with Chapman, Hirschenhorn learned that Chapman heard a small voice that said, "Just do it." Here are some more interesting coincidences. Just before 11 p.m., Lennon was killed as he strolled into the Dakota, the same building where Rosemary's Baby was filmed, where Lennon was still living at the time. Chapman, the atypical lone nut who killed Lennon, shows a heavy indication and evidence of MKUltra mind control programming. In 1967, Anger directed a film called Lucifer Rising, with music by a member of the Manson family, Bobby Beausoleil. In another interesting association and coincidence, Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page was contracted to do the music for Lucifer Rising, but was fired. Anger claimed Page was taking too long to finish, strung out on heroin, and the music he had so far provided was unusable, which is probably all true. America's current state of decline is not a spontaneous trend that sprung out of nowhere. Rather, it is the result of decades of secret society's occult influence on corrupting the political system by use of the media and the entertainment industry, and establishing believable lies that astonishingly continue to deceive the masses on a daily basis. A push for globalization, sustainability, green energy, and world government. With national industry, commerce, and institutions being collectivized by multinational corporate interests, taking more and more away from individual citizens and business owners in favor of the greater good of the world village. The problem is the greater good is a myth, a fairy tale, for history has proven that to be the biggest lie of all. How long will it take to realize that 90% of the things promised by government always results in the opposite occurring, and more money being siphoned from Americans' bank accounts in the process? More jobs overseas, more corporate welfare, more foreign aid, more to illegal aliens, and less to the American citizen. This is not bureaucracy, it is United States policy. In truth, despite smoke and mirrors, the U.S. does very little and spends very little on the individual citizens. In fact, the U.S. doesn't look out for the average citizen in any way. This is United States State Department policy dictated by the Council on Foreign Relations for more than 70 years. They use this tactic over and over and simply change the talking points, change the rhetoric, change the lies. They hook you, then bait and switch. Hopefully, you have learned, or will now, that it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. The influential politicos are all members of the club, and they are all working for the New World Order, an order supposedly in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. This goes in line with you can keep your own doctor, keep your insurance. We know Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. He's got them. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Read my lips, no new taxes. What the New World Order really is a one-world totalitarian socialist government where all aspects of human life are under control of a small group of dominant elitists who believe themselves to be gods. They believe by simple virtue of their bloodline and birthright to be the rulers of us all. They are also the high priests and priestesses of the mysteries. As they dominate the esoteric secret societies behind the scenes, so do they seek to dominate the exoteric world as well. And their adepts are helping them. In fact, all the top leaders of the world in politics and big business are high-ranking members of these secret societies. Like George Carlin said, it's a club, and you and I are not in the club. By the way, it's the same club they use to beat you over the head with, telling you what to think. There is much counterintelligence programming used to suppress these hidden truths. The media has gone to great lengths to label such truths as wacky conspiracy theories, to suppress the public's designed short attention span, to dismiss any further investigation. I'm glad so far as you have already spent more time investigating this information than the average American. Hopefully, this trend will change. After reviewing the information previously covered, it is understandable how the American people can be so blind. They have been mind-controlled. Another secret society working to fulfill the vision of the UN's founders is the Central Intelligence Agency, via, among many black ops, Operation MKUltra and Project Mockingbird. MKUltra was a U.S. government human research operation on mind control and behavioral engineering started in 1953. The program engaged in many illegal activities, including using unwitting U.S. and Canadian citizens as test subjects. MKUltra used numerous methodologies to manipulate people's mental states and alter brain functions, including the surreptitious administration of drugs like LSD, sensory deprivation, isolation, electroshock, as well as various forms of torture. 80 institutions, including 44 colleges and universities, as well as hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies, took part in MKUltra. The CIA operated at these institutions using front organizations. Although some top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA's involvement, most were not. The research and development consisted of chemical, biological, and radiological material capable of employment in clandestine operations to control human behavior. The program consisted of some 149 sub-projects, which the agency contracted out to various universities, research foundations, and 185 private researchers also participated. Because the CIA funded MKUltra indirectly, many of the participants were unaware that they were dealing with the agency. MKUltra was officially halted in 1973 under President Richard Nixon, if you choose to believe that. Undoubtedly, MKUltra continues as a black operation. Mockingbird as well. Both operations are used to control mass media and provide cover for black ops. Much of what influences society as a whole is the result of this hidden force's use of the subliminal in advertising and mass media. Subliminal messages are one of the great secrets of the ages. The first signs of subliminal perception appeared in the writings of Democritus, 400 BC, who stated, "Much is perceptible which is not perceived by us." Plato added to the same notion in his work, Timaeus, as did Aristotle in his work, Parva Naturalia, 2,000 years earlier. Philosopher Montaigne reported on the phenomenon in 1580, and Leibniz in 1698 discussed the idea that there are numberless perceptions, little noticed, which are not sufficiently distinguished to be perceived or remembered, but which become known through certain consequences. Sigmund Freud and his nephew Edward Bernays explored concepts and theories of the subconscious or unconscious mind in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. One of Freud's associates, Dr. O. Potzel, is responsible for one of the first scientific discoveries of subliminal persuasion in his book, Law of Exclusion. Potzel discovered that dreams were drawn from stimuli perceived at an unconscious level prior to the dream. He concluded that dreams were primarily based upon subliminally perceived information. By 1919, Potzel's strongly established relationship between subliminal stimuli, post-hypnotic suggestion, and compulsive neurosis, an individual will perform acts which he has been programmed to do without any knowledge of why. It was proven in the 1950s that if only one image of soda and popcorn was intercut into a motion picture, sales of soda and popcorn would greatly increase. The image captures the subconscious mind and stimulates desire. Everyone knows that sex sells, and that could not be more true. Subliminal sex in advertising and mass media is nothing new, but today sex in the media is no longer subliminal. Miley Cyrus and other sex tarts have broken new ground in what is viewed on screen and in performances, but the subliminal messages, many of them with Luciferian symbology, are more prevalent than ever. Today, accelerating satanic and Luciferian Masonic imagery absolutely permeates Hollywood, television, and the music industry. It is not just for show or mood or effect, and it is not just because it is cool or helps to sell records and movie tickets. No, it is part of a devious, clear, and concise social programming agenda. Satanic imagery and debaucherous behavior is displayed as cool and hip by the pop culture creators and mass media propagandists. This is practically a worldwide phenomenon, certainly a Western world phenomenon. Well, what do you expect when only 6 corporations own and control 95% of the mass media we see? This shift towards evil in the media has early roots, but really began to take hold in the 1950s teenage rebel syndrome created by Hollywood and James Dean. By that time, CIA Project Mockingbird was in full swing. Created by the CIA to infiltrate the mass media, in particular to influence reporting of the news and the content in Hollywood films and television, Project Mockingbird continues to this day. The CIA is composed of many members of Skull and Bones and the Brotherhood of Death. George Bush was director of the CIA long before he was president. He was also a drug smuggler, which is apropos since the Russell Trust, founded by William Huntington Russell, established Skull and Bones at Yale in 1832. Russell was involved and made his fortune in the British opium trade prior to the Chinese Opium Wars, also known as the Anglo-Chinese Wars from 1839 to 1842 and 1856 to 1860. The CIA is a bloodline, a family business. It is the muscle of the order known as the executive branch of the Council on Foreign Relations, founded by Colonel Edward M. House, an ardent anti-constitutionalist socialist, whose right-hand man was President Woodrow Wilson. Meetings began in June 1918 in New York City. The meetings were headed by the corporate lawyer Elihu Root, who had served as Secretary of State under President Theodore Roosevelt, and 108 high-ranking officers of banking, manufacturing, trading, and finance companies, together with many lawyers. The members were proponents of Wilson's internationalism and the goal of a one-world government. The insiders of the Council on Foreign Relations, who were known as the Milner Group, seized the opportunity to create an organization of diplomats, high-level government officials, and academics, together with lawyers, bankers, and industrialists, to engineer government policy toward one world, a merger of supercapitalism and communism. A one-world totalitarian socialist government where all aspects of human life are under the strict control of a small group of dominant men in banking and finance. This is the goal of the Milner Group. The CFR was officially founded on July 29, 1921. In 1922, $125,000 was raised from the wealthiest members of the council via letters soliciting funds to the 1,000 richest Americans. These funds were used to create Foreign Affairs, a magazine published in September of 1922, which is today the authoritative view of international relations, working for the continuation of the Anglo-American establishment and one-world government.